Peter.
I'd just quickly add a point to Leslie's remarks. One of the benefits of us now having a 25-year capital plan is some of these major contractors are going to want to come back and come back and come back and continue to be as part of the Sound Transit pipeline, which also means the partnerships that they establish with DBEs, I think they look at as a more enduring relationship rather than a one-off, which I think will actually serve us well going forward. So.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
And please extend our thanks to all the committee members. And
Thank you.
okay, we're going to move on to our reports. And I'm going to ask Peter to introduce first report regarding escalator performance.
I've spoke to this a little bit earlier. I just want to welcome both David Huffaker from the Operations Department and Julie Montgomery from our Design, Engineering, and Construction. They are both working diligently on a vexing challenge we're having with escalator availability, specifically at Husky Stadium. And I'll just let them take the numbers from here. I think it will raise some interesting questions. I would love to tell you that we know precisely what the problem is and have a bead on the precise answer. We don't as of this time. There is a study going on and an independent assessment by a contractor. We are taking measures to improve on how things are performing now, but we are hoping that this independent study will give rise to some important data where we will have a permanent fix to this problem. And with that, I'll let David and Julie take it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. As noted, I'm David Huffaker, Deputy Executive Director for Operations in Support Services. And with me today is Julie Montgomery from the Director of Architecture and Art from our Design, Engineering, and Construction Management Department. And we're here to give you a report on the performance of the escalators on the link system in whole, but with a particular focus on the University of Washington Station. Here's an overview of some of the key takeaways and points that we're going to cover today. Elevators and escalators provide the convenience and speed for our customers to reach our stations. And indeed, given the design of our link system, with a number of stations that are both elevated or underground, these conveyances provide the primary and sometimes the only access to the station. Unfortunately, the escalators, particularly at University of Washington Station, have not met our performance standards and are a source of great frustration both for our customers and for us. There have been a number of long-term outages in particular that have led to diminished access at the University of Washington Station. We've taken a number of steps to ameliorate the issues, and we'll cover those today. And as Peter noted, we do have an independent engineering study underway to help identify the root cause of the problems and identify possible solutions. So anyone who's a regular traveler at University of Washington Station will know this intuitively, but the escalator performance there has not met our targets. And this chart illustrates that pretty succinctly. The target availability rate for elevators and escalators throughout our system is 95%. That's represented by the red line that goes straight across. And this chart, which shows a rolling availability metric for the elevators, or actually this is escalators only on the system. And you can see the orange line, which represents the system-wide performance, has not met that 95% standard. And the gap is even worse when you look at the purple line, which represents University of Washington Station. And you can see the deterioration there. And in fact, for the past couple weeks, 3 of the 4 escalators that lead from the surface to the mezzanine level have been out of service. Now, one of those was returned to service this week, but we are still waiting on a permanent solution for all of them. Of note, of the escalators throughout the rest of the system, which are actually represented by that dark line, it's a dark gray, have actually met the 95% performance standard. And so we can talk about some of the differences that we see at the rest of the system versus UW. The biggest driver of the performance trends aren't the simple daily outages. It has been some longer-term service interruptions, and that's the focus of this engineering study. So what kind of maintenance is being done on escalators on Link? So vertical conveyances are on the link system are part of our maintenance scope of work that is managed by our partners at King County Metro. And Metro, in turn, has a contract with Kone, which is their vendor for managing conveyances throughout the King County system. So that's not just Link, which is managed on our behalf, but the DSTT, their other transit centers and park and rides, and other King County administration buildings. The routine maintenance is performed on a monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, and annual basis, and that includes things like simple inspections, lubricating, and calibrating the various safety switches. And when there's an outage reported, a Kone escalator technician is required to be on site within 2 hours, depending on the emergency status. It could be less than that, to assess the outage and bring the conveyance back into service. And there's two general types of issues. Some outages are quick to restore, such as a restart after a safety switch trip. And then other outages, which may require repairs or parts orders, are the ones that lead to the longer service interruption. And again, it is these longer term outages that are driving the highest degree of frustration. So what's going on specifically at University of Washington Station that's not happening elsewhere on the system? We do have a number of safety switches that are being triggered at UW that we're not seeing the same failures at other stations. And escalators that are used today include more than 24 safety switches of various elements, horizontal, vertical, and those are there to ensure the safety of the customer. And they can be switched or they can be tripped off for any number of reasons. Sometimes it's as simple as someone carrying a bike or a suitcase onto the escalator and bumping up against the balustrade, or rubbing up against the handrail. That could set off the safety switch. However, throughout our system, we have people who have bikes and suitcases and do other things on their system, and we don't see the same failure rate for the safety switches. And so the safety switch issues can typically be restored relatively quickly. In some cases, the security staff who are on site are equipped to restore that escalator back to service. Other times, a Kone technician is required. At UW, we've also seen a number of parts failures that have been occurring earlier than we would expect for the age of the system. And when these parts fail, such as the sprocket you see in this picture, the replacement part may not be in inventory. Some of these parts have long lead times, or they might even need to be fabricated, and this causes more of the long-term outage. The parts are not typically stocked, although we'll talk about that on the next slide. There's also the potential for other underlying causes that could cause outages, and these are going to be reviewed also as part of the study. So what are we doing about this? Operations and DECM, as you've heard, have partnered on initiating this engineering study to evaluate the current state of the escalators. Their task is to identify the root cause of the issues and recommend next steps. The study is looking at everything from soup to nuts, the design standards, construction, installation, maintenance records, as well as reviewing industry standards. The consultant has already been on site and has met with staff of all aspects of the operation of the escalators, and their report is in progress, but it will not be available until March. In addition, we've put the general contractor of the station on notice that we will not close out the contract until this engineering study has been completed and we can verify whether or not design or installation issues are contributing to the problems we've experienced. And of course, we've also been working very closely with our partners at King County Metro in the management of the vertical conveyances. This is a high priority issue for our managing director of rail at Metro, and in fact, I met with him again this morning, in part to discuss the current status of the escalators. King County as a whole is reviewing the performance of the contractor to ensure that they're adhering to the contract terms. We're also working with King County to improve the time to return an escalator to service. We've initiated a review of the long lead time parts to order those that we know could lead to long delays in repairs. So as an example, in 2016, we had experienced a long-term outage due to a step failure at SeaTac Airport Station. And in response, we've now pre-ordered sets of stairs for each of the different types of escalators that we have in the system, and we're warehousing those steps. And so by doing this, we've been able to avoid the potential for other long-term outages by taking some of the steps that are in inventory and replacing those on site. We've also met with both the installing contractor and the maintainer to validate the settings of the safety switches in particular and to identify mitigation approaches. That information is also being incorporated into this study. We're also coordinating with the maintainer and our communications staff to provide more detailed customer updates regarding the status of the escalators and when we can expect to return them to service. I'm going to now turn it over to Julie to talk about what some of the other steps we're taking moving forward.
David. So what are the longer-term actions that we have underway? Well, both Peter and David had mentioned this independent consultant study. We want to look at those recommendations from the ongoing engineering study and prioritize the remediation required so that we can get these escalators in service more reliably. We will also continue to refine our specifications and design standards for upcoming stations. Where possible and appropriate, we will include specifications for possibly even heavier duty escalators, as well as open public stairs in addition to the escalator and elevator access for the public. Another key change we are making is in our contracting approach moving forward. We have worked together between the facilities and the design and engineering department to develop a specification for a combined installation and longer-term maintenance agreement for vertical conveyance vendors to better align the incentives for both installation and maintenance. Based on our discussions with the industry, this is actually a more attractive approach for both parties, and we believe will yield a better product in future stations. That concludes our presentation, and we would be happy to take any further questions you might have on this.
Peter?
I just want to add two additional thoughts. The earlier slide that talked about the premature failure of components. This is not a situation where a component is failing in 4 months that's supposed to last 6 months. This is like a component that's failing in 6 months that's supposed to last 4 years. So there's true mystery going on here in terms of that, which is one of the reasons we have this independent study specifically on the actual design and installation and those issues. And the other is just that this is compounded by the fact that some of these parts that are failing are these long lead items, and they aren't the ones that people are necessarily would expect to have in supply or in stock, which has really been perhaps the biggest challenge we've had on, rather than having things out for 2 hours or 4 hours or a day, we've had escalators at UW out for weeks waiting for the parts to arrive. So this is obviously gained a lot of focus by our operations department and the design and engineering department that delivered Husky Stadium, and they are working together, importantly, to try and find the solution.
So the report's not due until March. Between now and then, should we expect sort of continued degraded performance, or what's the short term?
So in the short term, so I had mentioned that there were 3 of 4 escalators that were out of service from the surface at University of Washington Station. Our technician has been able to get one of those 4 back in service, or one of the 3 that was out of service back in service. And we actually expect the parts delivery for those 3 escalators to come next week. And we've already been working with Kone staff and with King County Metro to ensure that those escalators are ready to take those parts, and so I would expect that turnaround will happen quite quickly. So the longer-term outages at UW should be taken care of, I would expect, soon. There's also one other outage of an elevator at SeaTac Airport that has been out of service for quite some time. That one, we know that the parts are on order, and that will not be delivered until early March. So we do have much better information from Kone as far as when they expect the parts to be received and put back, and the escalators put back into service.
We ruled out cougars. I'd check into that if I were Husky. Paul's first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Peter, thanks for the presentation. Peter, thanks for your question. I guess I want to make clear that the independent engineering study will also be looking at, within its purview, the design considerations that were there. You're shaking your head yes, and I see that in the longer-term actions, but I wanted to make sure it's also in this review.
Yes, and so this consultant is reviewing the original specifications and the various submittals that were provided during the construction phase of the project.
Thank you, and I share the question you had. Thank you.
Fred?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are other systems nationwide similar to ours experiencing the same kind of problems that we are, or is this something that is just unique to Sound Transit?
That's an excellent question. I would say escalators in general, and not just transit, escalators in general are very problematic, and the availability is something that I think everyone is challenged with. I know WMATA in Washington, D.C. is an agency that relies very extensively on elevators and escalators. Their availability standard is actually 93% for escalators, and they can't meet that target. They have an extensive program that they are putting in place to modernize and put in new escalators. But I know just anecdotally, just this past weekend, I was going to a Starbucks to actually work on this presentation, and I happened to be at a shopping center that had 2 escalators, and they were both out of service, and actually one of the 2 elevators was also out of service, and they had been out for quite some time. You see a number of long-term outages in the downtown Seattle Transit Tunnel as well, and those escalators also have been rebuilt in the past 10 years. So escalators themselves are quite a challenge.
If I could add to that, they're a particular challenge for transit agencies, and in fact, in the East Coast, a group of transit agencies joined together to form their own consortium just to have a pipeline of trained mechanics to deal with them. Part of the challenge, a very real challenge, is there is not a lot of competition in this market. And if you look at that bottom bullet on the slide, it says include long-term maintenance with contract for construction. That's not just so that the builder will also maintain it. That's actually for the purpose of enticing them to actually compete for the contract because they make their money on the maintenance. So this is one area that has vexed a lot of transit agencies across the country. However, I don't want to say that that is the rationale behind what's going on at UW Husky Stadium, because I think that may be a very unique one-off situation, but we won't know until the engineering study is complete.
Thank you, and one other. And if you're not comfortable answering this question here, we can do it offline. But are we pleased with the company that's doing the maintenance? And a follow-on to that is the general contractor who's responsible for this. These are still under warranty, I'm guessing. Are they being cooperative? And I'll just leave it at that if you're not comfortable answering here.
Sure. So you've got 2 parts of that question, and I'll answer one, and I'll let Julie answer the other. So as far as the comfort with the current maintainer, in my discussions with other people managing escalator maintenance, I've discovered that no one is happy with their escalator maintainer, but everyone has a different one, and they say, boy, everything was great back when so-and-so was doing our maintenance, and we're saying, no, that was horrible with our current maintainer. So I would say that what I have heard is, and as I mentioned, King County is doing a thorough review of their entire contract with Kone because they've heard dissatisfaction throughout more than just the link system. They have the DSTT group, the tunnel facilities group that manages the DSTT, has also had some issues. So there's a comprehensive work underway within King County procurement to study the performance of Kone and make sure they're adhering to the contract terms.
So to the question of the warranty, so the installing company was a different company from Kone. So the installer had a 1-year warranty on their equipment. So now we are under the maintenance with the Kone contract.
Dave?
And I'd like to add, too, that the one-year warranty is typical for the building overall, and so that's how that contract was written, with that one-year warranty, so.
Dave and then Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, the only good thing, at least about there was a lengthy escalator closure in the downtown transit tunnel at Pioneer Square by my office that coincided with my New Year's resolution to get in shape. So I've had the chance to experience firsthand. My actual question you sort of answered in the last one, but I'm trying to understand whether or not there are specific performance standards in the existing contracts. You mentioned you're reviewing them, or King County is, for compliance. At this point, is the responsibility on the maintainer, or is there some responsibility still on the installer or the parts manufacturer? Where does the responsibility lie, and are there, in that contract, standards for timely maintenance and repair, and what happens when they don't? Are there penalties for the inability to maintain them adequately?
Okay. That's an excellent question, and it's got a little bit of a nuance to it. So in our intergovernmental agreement with King County Metro, we have a performance standard of 95% availability. However, in the King County contract with Kone, that availability metric doesn't exist. And so there is a little bit of a disconnect there. There are other standards about response time and when they need to be on site, when they need to contact the link control center in this case, in the event of an outage. And there are a number of other statements, such as the vendor will have parts on hand, that are subject to interpretation, and it's probably getting beyond my expertise on how to answer whether it's in compliance or not. But in fact, that is one of the key areas that's being under review with King County staff, is to look at some of those statements and see how that has actually been enforced, and whether Kone can demonstrate that they're in compliance.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's the duration of the current maintenance contract? When is it up for renewal?
I believe it's 2019.
Bruce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So looking back on your reliability slide, it shows a downward trend for the Husky Station. Do we think that's continuing, or do we think to the degree that we can anticipate, do you have any, do you think more bad news is coming?
Well, I will say that for at least the last several weeks, we have bottomed out, and we're actually now improving. The last couple days, we've actually had an improved availability metric, and I do expect that we will have the other long-term outages repaired before the end of the month, certainly, and I think next week would be my expectation. So I believe the trend is at least stopped, and in fact, I believe it's reversed now. However, I have had moments when I wonder if I'm ever going to see the bottom. So, but I do believe that we're, I don't want to say through the worst of it, but I think we've seen improvement now.
Based on your previous comment, you may personally have bad escalator karma.
I think that's possible.
You better check on that, too.
So I'd like to add that the independent study, we are intending to get into the root causes of some of these mechanical failures. And we believe that if we can get to what is fundamentally causing some of these problems to occur, that then we can correct that and truly see a better performance overall.
I mean, the sprocket failure, as Peter points out, that is highly unusual. That is either a gross installation problem or a manufacturing defect at the sprocket level. So those are big deals. Have we talked to like the Port of Seattle? They have a lot of escalators, and their maintainer, are they happy with theirs?
They have made a lot of efforts to maintain their elevators and escalators. I know that they've got similar issues at times. So yes, we are in somewhat contact with them. So.
And I know the construction boom has tapped out, put a lot of pressure on the escalator and elevator installation and maintenance market. And I know the construction is taking the cream of the crop in terms of trained employees. So I do understand part of this, so.
Yeah, and I think that continues the conversation from the presentation before us as well, that keeping people engaged in our industry is an important thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Rob?
Okay, sometimes I feel like I am the star-crossed representative of this station. Not only is it in my neighborhood, but it's in my district. I'm the board member that represents this part of the city. We've had challenges with access, we've had challenges with wayfinding, and now we've had really long-term outages at the terminus. This is the end of our line. So it's resulted in a lot of angry customers, angry constituents, and to your point, board member Up the Grove, the biggest difference between outages in the downtown system and outages here is that there's an alternative. You can walk up the stairs. You can't walk up the stairs. When we close these escalators, they're closed, big yellow signs closed. You got to go take a different direction. First, I want to just express that frustration, and thank you, Peter, for recognizing that this is a brand new station, and we've got things that are breaking in month 6 that should have lasted 4 years. That is a really big deal, but we're not seeing the same sort of closures or challenges in Mayor Murray's Capitol Hill station. So clearly there's some design issues. But your neighborhood station, Mr. Mayor. And I'm not calling politics on that one, that yours are better than mine, that you're getting special treatment. But I will say that, I think that we have some really serious ridership issues here at the end of the line that I'm hoping that we can take a holistic approach to. And moreover, I really want to make sure that as we're getting to the design and implementation of the future stations, that we're recognizing that we need redundancy in the system. That is not what we've done here at Husky Stadium, and we need to learn that lesson and create that redundancy in future systems. Because I hear from a lot of folks who say, believe it or not, I'd be happy to walk up the stairs, but there's no stairs to walk up. And so now I have to wait in a line, and I'm polite, and so I let the folks with the bikes and I let the folks with disabilities get on those elevators, or folks who are elderly, and I sit around and I wait because there's no other way for me to get up there. And we need to really learn that lesson. A, we need to fix it. B, we need to learn the lesson moving forward. So I'm off my soapbox, and I apologize, but I felt like I had to get that off my chest. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Joe?
I'm glad you got off the soapbox and made room for others. We have some great strategy, or I hope some great strategy, it sounds good, for fixing the problem long-term. Meanwhile, the UW station itself is bringing us far below our 95% effectiveness rating. That station alone. Can we do more to make sure that the outages are short-term and quick, even if it's the emergency switch and our security staff can't turn the button back on for that outage? Can we have the staff less than 2 hours away? Can we have staff there full-time, ready to hit the button?
So
What can we do to make the outages even less?
Sure. So the maximum response time for Kone is 2 hours. They actually, if it's an ADA event, then their response time is shorter than that. It would be an hour. And if there's an entrapment on an elevator, it actually would be 30 minutes. But your point is well taken. And when we did have UW Husky football games this fall, we actually had 2 separate Kone teams on site to be ready to deal with the issues if they should happen to occur. Interestingly, when you had large crowds going through the station, although there were still some outages, they were quite minor, and even with fully loaded escalators, they were able to get them back up and running quite quickly. So that actually, for me, was an interesting test of the system. I can't say it's practical to have a team there 24/7. However, that was one of my inquiries as well.
If I could maybe put a finer point on that, I think it's fair to say that we're very pleased now with the responsiveness of the King County Metro Facilities Department, who is our contractor on this. I think it took a while for them to feel the same urgency that we did as we were seeing this roll out. We talked to Rob Gannon about it. He talked to his people about it. Like I said, we're very content with the responsiveness we're now getting. And therefore, in terms of that immediate turnaround time, it has improved considerably. All the turnaround time in the world won't help if we don't have the parts, which is another issue that we are trying to reconcile between our contract with King County Metro and King County Metro's contract with Kone namely the obligation that they have parts at the ready. As was pointed out early, some of these parts you wouldn't expect to need at the ready because you wouldn't expect them to fail, which gets back to Julie's point about why we really need to find the root cause.
Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion